It's easy to complain, but when you're forced and faced with an alternative option and you're forced and faced with a real decision to make, then only then can you actually be upset, or you can make a decision, right? Like in the absence of that option, you're just whining.
I already see that people who are in vulnerable groups are not going to get ahead compared to people not in vulnerable groups.
Every year, you should go out into the market and see whether or not you're being compensated adequately or there are not better opportunities available. It's gonna be slogging long hours.
When is unpaid overtime part of work, and when is unpaid overtime part of a toxic working environment?
Right?
Yeah.
So if I've got aspirations of becoming somebody very quickly, right?
Sometimes we are afraid to do something. You fear shame. I don't want shame. We're trying to break that burden by sharing stories of courage, resilience, and we want to be able to celebrate your story.
Shameless. Hi, my name is Nono Bukiti, and I am the Chief Ambassador here at Transformation Leader.
And I'm Zikamagan Guides, and I'm the host of the Shameless Podcast, brought to you none other than by T4L Leader. God,
By Transformation Leader.
By Transformation Leader.
Are we paying you? I hope not.
Yeah. You're not.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
It's free.
Yeah,
It's
this
free.
is
Okay,
out
so
the
do
goodness
not
of
send no
our-
invoice for this session.
I feel like that was aggressive. And it's a toxic work environment now that I'm working in.
Oh my word. I'm sorry. Please don't passive aggressive guru yourself up into this
all right.
space.
So,
all right.
what are we talking about?
So
Let
I'm
me
going to
know.
start with stories. Okay. So we're just
Yep.
going to jump right in.
Go for it.
All right. So this is from Chris from New York. The titles, by the way, well done on the titles, guys. The unpaid overtime trap.
Hey, overtime, unpaid.
Mhm.
Is it overtime if it's unpaid? Yeah, just working. Oh my
Fair
gosh.
point.
That's just rough.
At my last job, so we can laugh, we established that if they're not in the situation.
No, you can't, because there's somebody's story that he's not in New York and he's in some
Oh,
other
you mean
place
there's someone else who's
who's
in this
already in that run.
So we can't laugh at anything they say.
You
Okay.
can laugh at Chris and his name, but that's about it.
Chris from New York.
Haha.
I'm going to try not
About
laugh at
you,
this
for
story.
you.
I haven't read it. I really haven't read it, so we'll see. At my last job, my manager would joke about how I would have to work late during busy periods. Fair. But those jokes always turned into reality.
Fair.
I was working 70 hours a week without any overtime pay. The worst part, every time I asked about compensation, I was met with, it's just part of the job. We're all in this together. I ended up doing everything outside work for the team and not getting credit for any of it. My breaking point was when they asked me to come in on the weekend during my holiday because we just need a little extra help.
Little.
I left the company that Monday, but now I'm actually selective about where I spend my energy, especially when it comes to unpaid work. He even has an emoji of like the emoji and it's blowing smoke out the nostrils.
So, firstly, it sounds like a Gen Z to me.
I said I wasn't going to laugh, so I'm going to keep a straight face.
I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z sometimes
Do you know what? I think the older generation say that a lot about millennials.
Fair enough. That's true. But in my good old days, we had a good old work ethic. You'd buckle your shoes and you'd work hard so that
Okay,
you could
so
get
when
the
is
end.
when is unpaid overtime part of work, and when is unpaid overtime part of a toxic working environment?
So genuinely, my view is that
What are the terms and conditions of your contract?
no,
Or what?
but it's very individualistic, right?
Yeah.
So if I've got aspirations of becoming somebody very quickly, right, I should not be surprised if I'm going to work
Like a
like a
DOG.
DOG, right? Like, so I'm going to put in the hours, 70-hour weeks, and I'm not going to bat an eyelid because I'm trying to be somewhere quickly.
Mhm.
And that's associated to the hunger that I have, the desires I have, the ambitions I have, and the sacrifices I'm willing to make in order to get there. And so,
No wonder you're one of the youngest chief mining engineers. Eh? Is that
So-
is that a flex?
I don't even know what.
Okay.
So I feel I'm incensed by this. Because I genuinely
Yeah.
feel like at times, we talk about a work-life balance and all this stuff, but everything
You're working
has
in the ER. What do you mean?
But everything has a season, right? So if you want to be somewhere, you can't afford to be having this extravagant laissez-faire approach towards getting to somewhere, right? It's gonna be slogging long hours. The only
Did you
part,
know that Africa, this is just literally, this is where my brain went,
okay,
that Africa has one of the lowest productivity rates in the world.
I don't know about that. I don't even believe
And
it,
I'm
to be honest.
wondering,
I don't
when you're
believe it.
talking about this,
I don't believe
and you're
it.
saying like, is it because of the type of work that is being done? Is it the fact that,
I
you know,
don't
when it's 5 p.m., people want to go home and they're not
No,
willing to work long
I
hours?
disagree with a
Okay, so
lot
you're
of
just
that.
upset with the Gen Zs. That's it.
No,
That's your
it's
gripe.
firstly I would like to address that because
I'm just
who
saying.
made that? Who calculated that Africa is less productive than like the rest of who? Nah. Look, okay, I think it's there are relative
Hey,
oversimplifications.
today,
of
someone has been incensed.
No,
And
I'm
you
like,
can
just like,
see,
but
guys,
it is.
I'm sitting like
I'm
this.
just like, I'm like, which
I'm scared.
look.
Is this a safe place?
I think there's differences that exist in markets, right? And in
Yes.
segments
Mhm.
of within industries, right? And so highly competitive spaces, from a capitalistic point of view, you will drive hard to and get people working long hours, late hours, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And in some instances, if the competition is not that high, yes, you might not have people driving as hard, but it's also because I believe there's a greater balance of life that people are trying to achieve. And so you are pushing hard on this front, but you're also pushing out on this front. As a whole, you are productive within society, but not just singularly focused on being the best capitalistic society that exists to man.
So I want you
Mhm.
to
Yes. To open my mind.
remember what you just said.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a work environment and I'm saying to you, boss Ziggy,
Yes.
I believe that I can contribute to your team, but I want a work-life balance because in a capitalistic point of view, from the same premise that you're making, I should be able to basically, because that's not everything
but that's
to
not what I'm
work.
saying. What I'm
Okay.
saying is sometimes some people in your team, and it's important to build your team, and there will be A players who want to be A plus players. There'll be B players who want to be A players. There'll be B players that will continuously be B players. And there'll be A players that think they're A players, but they're actually B players. So they're actually B players thinking they're A players, right? So you have to have a balance of all these different types of people. And so your A players trying to be A stars or your A star players, those are the people who are going to work those long hours. They're dependable, reliable from a capitalistic point of view. You're going to run
Probably
and
going to
chug
get the
them,
promotion,
and you're going to get the
big pay
promotion,
raise,
but they're
the
going to not
bonus.
have a work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And that is a path that they themselves have chosen, but you also as a leader need to be cognizant of those people, and you can work with them because that is what they're aspiring for.
I want to ask you this. Why are you smiling?
Because I feel like I'm defensive here. I feel like
You
I'm out
definitely
here, like,
have started very
aggressive.
defensively.
Is
Is it because of that last episode? Is this like
got nothing to do
okay,
with
all
everything
right.
to do with this episode? Because I'm like, how are people out here busy putting metrics about bad mouthing the whole of Africa like a single, like it's a single
Okay,
country?
I'm sorry. Let's retract that statement.
Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate that.
I don't know where I read it. I think it was a lie.
Burn it.
It was fake.
Whatever that
it was
is,
totally fake. It's
that's
not
fine.
even true. Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question in regards to that. Really around, I love, I think this chair just makes me feel like I'm more like
Smart.
like I'm the questioner. Like I don't
Okay,
have to be
gotcha.
like the aggressive person who's trying to
Okay.
like, anyway.
I feel like because I
Because
don't
now
much-
you're like, yeah. So now you're, so it's like that. There's a spirit in that chair.
Wow.
But honestly, like when you talk about you have the A plus players and stuff, what happens when circumstances out of the control of some of those players? Because there are some societal policies that may impact how we view players. And what I mean by that is, I remember because you said that you love Zambia. So I did read this I don't think this is a lie. They have like some really great policies around women.
Yeah.
They have, I think it's like governmental policies, like it's against the law not to do this. 6 months maternity leave,
Okay.
full pay, things like Mother's Day,
Yeah.
which you can take once a month,
Okay.
and then all the other like laws. And then when you look at the counterparts, assuming the counterpart being a male, the male gets, I think, 7 days paternity
5 or
leave,
7,
5
yeah.
and 7 days paid leave, and then the one. So if you were to compare human A with the chromosome whatever and human B with the chromosome whatever, just in case people are getting confused.
No, that's not good.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
now we're not getting into there. I don't know what's happening today.
I don't know, but it's
What is going-
unnecessary.
It's so unnecessary. That one
continue.
was unnecessary.
That
I
was
agree.
unnecessary,
Anyway,
yeah.
but when you now stack them, you see that one costs more to a company than another. And not saying that you don't need both or whatever. Like, so when you look at that, right? And like, let's say a person hires somebody and they have those, there are some prejudices, whether they're right or wrong, there are prejudices that exist that go, well, I'm not going to get that person because they're not going to be productive. Not accounting for that there are some female that do not have children, that are not married, and are, if not better than their counterparts, right? So if you're looking at the person to person, but are still being paid less than that person because of the perceived productivity metrics that we're not saying we should measure, what for capitalism.
I didn't say you shouldn't measure. I just said
Anyway, so if we're talking about that, they're getting paid less because of that perceived thing of like, well, you're going to be 50% less, but not every woman is having a kid and all that. And then it doesn't mean that when you're at work, it doesn't mean you're not giving 110% like the next person.
the first part I'd like to say is that the last time I tried to talk about this, it happened to be in a room full of women, and it didn't go down well.
Hey, a quick heads up. My name is No from Transformation Leader. So I get that. You hate your boss. Honestly, with that coffee slurp perfectly timed to cut off your every brilliant thought, the office gossip, a full-blown soap opera starring everyone you wish you didn't know. And Jack, the guy who just got promoted, yeah, we both know that promotion should have been yours. But let's be real, you're not quitting, not yet. So instead of planning your exit, take this course, How to Thrive in a Toxic Work Environment, for only $12.99 at t4leader.com. Because if you're going to stay stuck for now, you might as well learn how to win while you're there. Okay, so maybe let's not. I just want you to give me like generic advice, not necessarily
So,
like women advice, because I don't want it to be a
yeah, I
thing.
I'm not professional enough, or not knowledgeable enough. But I think that the reality of it all is, as leaders, we have to look at our team and look to see the balance on the team, and you will look at the risks that are associated, but at the end of the day, it's about compensating an individual for the work that they do and what they contribute within that team. And whether you manage your risks in terms of the composition of your team in a different way, or other structures that you can put in place, that's a different conversation. But if I've got person X and person Y, they're both contributing and they're both equally determined and they both are striving for X, then it's upon you and incumbent on you to make sure that you provide them both that equitable standpoint to look from. But that also is a very simplistic way to look at it, because at times, as an individual who might be getting a short end of the stick, you are better off also having that discussion and being a bit direct about it, because the presence of prejudice will perpetuate in the absence of actually some confrontation to it. So you need to be comfortable in having that difficult and tough discussion and being able to go forward. The last thing that I'm going to say is that I always encourage for somebody to always have something in their pocket. And by that, I mean, every year you should go out into the market and see whether or not you're being compensated adequately, or there are not better opportunities available. Because what ends up happening in that space is that you will always have something in your pocket, and you are making that decision to be where you are. And with that, you are therefore in a better mind or state of mind, knowing that I am here because either there are no options, I am delusional about the value that I provide, or this is the option that I prefer. And in different moments, in different stages, your priorities might change. But I think that ability to have something in your pocket allows for you to have a very honest conversation of whether or not I am being overworked, the compensation doesn't make sense, or I am not being equitably compensated and there's a prejudice that exists. Or if there are other things that outweigh all of that. And you only really, it's easy to complain, but when you're forced and faced with an alternative option, and you're forced and faced with a real decision to make, then only then can you actually be upset, or you can make a decision, right? Like in the absence of that option, you're just whining. And I think that those are the three levels for me that I would sort of package and look at it.
Okay. So in short, in regards to the overtime person,
Yeah.
the question that you have to maybe ask yourself is, what's the environment that you're in?
Yeah.
Because there are some environments where project-based, finance-based, whatever the case, there are deadlines that come.
Yeah.
And then another thing is around, is there poor planning with your leader?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is poor planning, or maybe it's
Or
just under-resourced, or whatever the case may be. And then you have to ask yourself that question of, is this the environment I want to stay in?
Or
right?
alternatively, how do I improve that, right? So if it's poor planning or under-resourced, then how do you automate processes to make it
Yes, that's a good
better?
point.
How
That's
do
true,
you
that's true.
improve or streamline
Or
waste?
help them figure it out.
Help them
Yeah,
figure it out.
yeah.
How do you act like a leader in a space where your leader might be overwhelmed by the things
Because they
that are
don't
coming?
even know if they're coming or going.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that is to me actually one of the most important things, where you feel that overwhelming force of constantly being overworked.
You also have to understand that some people like that. I have definitely been in a work environment where we had implemented things to make things better, and people were like, what am I going to do now? And that's a reality. So that's why you also have to look at your environment. But I 1,000% agree with what you said. I think the other thing around the working overtime is that last piece that you mentioned is about, are you an A+ player?
Yeah.
Because, and then those of you who are not A+ players, please leave the A+ players to do the A+ things, because stay in your lane. Because I think what makes workplaces toxic is when A+ players do A+ things, and you with your B+
behavior want to be compared to an A+, and you're like, but also me. And it's not also you. You are here.
Because A+ players get away with a lot more things,
but they are
because
giving their blood.
They have definitely deserved it. I'm not saying, listen, I have gotten away with a lot of things because I know what I bring and the business knows what I bring. But it's a sacrifice. So you cannot compare yourself. If you're not an A+ player, you cannot. And you have to be very honest. And how you can be honest about it is ask your friends. They'll tell you.
No, they won't. Some friends are liars, yeah. But you know what is interesting? Because I had a discussion with somebody, and we were just talking about the team that they have. And they were telling me that they feel like they're driving their team very hard, and they're trying to drive the whole team. And in the end, it's creating a workspace that's quite toxic and quite combative, because you're forcing people to do things that they might not necessarily be comfortable with, or working outside of their bounds. And there were two elements to it. The first element was they themselves were looking at the sacrifices that they are willing to make, and they were imposing them upon their team. right? And having that expectation of their team to be very similar to them. So if they work on weekends or they work very late, they had that expectation that my team would equally work like that. And the reality is that not everybody in the team would do that and are expected to do that or have their life set up for them to be able to do that. And so that, in my view, was an unfair expectation. And that comes to that makeup of your team. If you want everybody to look and feel, work just like you, then hire only
Everyone
people
who's- yeah,
who looks
exactly.
but know that
Mhm.
you'll only be working with a certain group of people and you will only be able to solve a certain type of problem
Mm.
and you won't be able
And
to
maybe
drive.
and maybe
And it's
that's
probably,
okay.
I think
Because
it's
it's
even
your
brief,
phase.
but I feel like
'Cause, like, when
if
I-
your whole team looks like that, you
No,
probably
why
be
I say it's
conflicting.
okay is because it might be some phases. And the reason I say that is that sometimes certain types of people do better in certain types of phases of a business.
Yeah.
I am someone who really does believe in like a diverse team. My team is extremely diverse, and we've had situations where we've, I would say, lost business because of the diversity of our team. And I know people are like, oh, how can you say that? That's like, you shouldn't say that. But that's the truth. Like, someone didn't react well with the diversity in our team, and pretty much we didn't get the business. And it is just what it is. But the thing is, like, that's very important to me. And I think that that's not necessarily the case for every leader. And I don't want to sit, like, I feel like you don't know what you don't know. I guess that's what I want to premise that. And that's why I go, like, maybe that's okay, because maybe you guys are, I think of like in consulting, you know, you have the strategy people, and the strategy people are literally, they might come from different backgrounds, but
But
they're
they're
all
similar.
the same, if that makes sense. But they're going in, it's with the knife, in, out, and that works, and they are able to be very successful with that. So there is diversity in because diversity is a lot of things. It's not just man, woman. You know, there's multiple ways that you can look at diversity. So it's like I look at that and go, that might be okay for what? Because I don't know, what are you doing?
So, but
You
the
know?
thing is, in my mind, that portion of the discussion
Mm-hmm.
was more looking at, as a leader, you should also adjust the way that you look at your team, right?
Yeah.
And the expectations you have on your team, right?
No one's
and
gonna work as hard as you. Like,
Correct.
especially
if you're the leader as well, right? And
you're
they
usually
don't have,
you're usually there for a reason.
and you're different. You're not
You
gonna
are
be.
you're not gonna be, you're probably an A, not even A plus, you're probably an A star.
Correct, right? And so I think
And the next A star is probably going to be your replacement.
correct.
And
But-
hopefully you're grooming them to be.
and there'll be one, if not, if you're lucky,
If
in
you're
your
lucky,
team, right?
yeah, you're
so
lucky,
so
you'll
you
get
shouldn't
one,
you
yeah.
shouldn't. It's a bit
Unfair.
unfair to have that sort of expectation across your team, right?
I agree that it's unfair, but I think that if you're a leader, you understand that psychology of humans. So I've noticed, like, you will probably only really feel it more when this happens to you, where people who get promoted are usually like the people who they're getting promoted to.
Yeah.
As
And
in,
That's
I'm
it.
waiting for someone to prove me wrong.
Yeah. Well,
As in, and I'm not trying to be shady about it, as in, I have even been given feedback and I realize, the reason that they really jiving with me is because I remind them of them.
yeah. And then it makes it easier for them to take you up and move you along.
Exactly.
But so what I then also said in terms of the second part of that was,
Mhm.
if you have a frank conversation with the team,
Mhm.
say, look, guys, my aspirations get us here. And there's need for B players and A players.
Mhm.
The A players, I'm going to
is
ask.
not bad, eh?
Yeah, but the A players, I'm going to ask you to work overtime. I'm going to ask a lot from you. And if you're able to do it, then I think that is going to be very useful for your career, especially if that aligns with your ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
So-
You're probably going to be first to be promoted, first to
Yes.
get the pay raise, first.
And
B plus players, keep quiet.
But-
you sat out.
but you don't
Is
need
that
to
what
say it
you're
like
saying?
that. You don't need to say it like that.
If
But-
you're not thinking like that in your head, guys.
No, but the
No, I
point,
get
the
you.
point was, if you're okay with that, know that this is the direction and trajectory. But if you want to be going home and doing all these things and having a wider and a broader spectrum to your life, then know that your journey is actually going to take a lot longer. And I'm not going to be putting you forward on some of these other things that require a lot more time. And it's the choice is yours.
That is okay. I'm going to make one comment, then I'm going to move on to the next thingy.
Yeah.
But I hear you. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying. However, when you're speaking that way, I already see that people who are in vulnerable groups are not going to get ahead compared to people not in vulnerable groups. What I mean by that is if you're a single mother, even if you want to be like that, you will not be able to be like that because your life is not set up like that. If you are disabled, if you are neurodivergent or what, like if you're not a stock standard cookie cutter person for whatever that thing is that allows for that, you're most likely not going to actually get those promotions or get those things because you don't look like those people who get
No,
there.
but your journey is just going to be longer, right? Because you're not going to be able to hit the number of hours that need to be done. You're not going to be able to provide the output that needs to be outputted. So maybe
It is what it is.
It is what it is,
Okay.
right? Or alternatively, you could defy the odds, right? And actually give a lot of time outside of the other responsibilities that you have. And you could still be able to produce quite high quality work and a large amount, but you're probably doing it in maybe slightly less time because you're really efficient, you plan
I
really well,
also
you work
think
really
that
hard.
what we need to do as leaders is not only look at value as in an output, like, number of hours per day.
Yes.
And maybe look at it like try to think of like different things like the innovation that they bring, because someone might be innovative. Like I feel like your hour, and I say this like so respectfully, like your hour might be somebody's like 10 hours. Do you know what I mean?
I understand what you
Do you
mean.
get
I
what-
think
so,
10
like,
hours is a lot though.
But
Yeah,
the
yeah,
premise is around that
That
fact that it's
the
not
value.
always the same. Like,
Yes.
so it's also like trying to look at the value so that somebody who might only be at work from 9 to 5, but they are giving you way more value than someone who comes to work from 6 to 6 hours wise. You know what I mean? Or
And I
6 to
think-
10 p.m.
And
but
I
they-
think what's important it'd be both incumbent on the leader, but also the employee to be like, I am providing this value, right?
Yeah, showcase
And
it,
showcase and
demonstrate it,
demonstrate,
yeah.
right? Because you could very easily work a lot, but not work smart.
And not
and
work
not
on things that are
demonstrate
important.
and not work on. So
Mhm.
you lose a lot. But at the end of the day, long hours, overworked, overpaid. The question now reflects on you. What do you want out of life? As that's how I see it. But also as leaders, we need to plan better. We need to communicate better, and we need to have a broader and a more open view on how we tackle this problem, so that we're not creating zombies, but we still being able to deliver the value that we're trying to get.
Cool. So the blame game.
Thank you.
Submitted by Kwame from Ghana. You have 2 minutes to
Got
answer.
2 minutes. All right, cool. Let's go.
At my previous
fire.
company, every mistake, no matter how small, was pinned on me. Victim mentality. I'm joking.
But
I didn't even know. I remember I said I was going to talk about victim mentality. I didn't know that this is, it just happened.
But it's so deep.
Like it is deep. Okay. If a project was delayed, I was the first one to get called into the meeting to explain myself. Why always you, Kwame? Okay. And
Imagine I'm a maths teacher. I'll tell you the story.
even though the issues were often beyond my control, my manager would make sure to publicly point the finger. That's so deep. To publicly point the finger while taking credit for my success. We all know those ones. It became so toxic that I started to avoid the office to escape the constant blame. I realized that being part of the environment was hurting my career, so I started looking for a better place to work. That and it's
no.
no victim mentality there.
Now, so I got 2 minutes, so I'll try to keep
Okay.
it brief.
All right.
The first thing is that obviously feeling and being blamed for a whole bunch of things is not nice or not fair, especially when you don't feel like you deserve it, and or if you don't deserve it, right? But then now talking about my math teacher, so I had a math teacher way back when, and I'm sat there in class, and I'm sat next to some friend, and the maths teacher's like, "Hey, see, stop talking." I'm like, I'm not even talking. Like,
Energy. Your
I was just
aura
like-
is
it's
of
like-
someone who's
it's
talking.
like, and can you believe what he said to me? He said, "You're the smart one who makes other people talk on your behalf."
Is that a compliment? It's not a
I
compliment.
felt like a victim because I'm like, I'm not even like talking.
But he
But
thinks
yet
you're the smart
I'm
one.
being blamed for talking.
Yeah, that's deep.
And I'm like, how?
like
How's
you're
it-
writing it on your piece
Yeah, exactly,
of paper
right?
or something.
But then the question now, sort of 100 years later, I'm thinking is, so what was I doing for that to be the view that he sees in me?
What were you doing?
I think I was very likable, very talkative, and like, and I would.
So you
Outflow.
were making people talk.
I wasn't making anybody talk. They were talking on their own accord on a topic that I had nothing to do with, right? Like, but the thing is, I think I maybe gave too many examples or put myself in positions too often where
Raise your hands too many times or what?
no, where I was that person, right? So I had set a precedence for myself, right? And so the expectation was that I was that instigator and I was that person talking.
So
and
basically, it's that like sunk cost bias type thing, or like,
Yeah.
you know, like as in that Kwame may actually be okay, but because the first two projects he was
he was
terrible,
that person,
it's
right?
just now,
it's now just
we're
building
always
into
pulling
that, right?
him. Hey, you.
You're always doing this, right? So, and I think to get out of that sunk cost bias, you almost have to have a session communication wise, but then it's incumbent on you in order to be able to have and turn that tide of being viewed like that, right? And I think that is an uphill battle and a difficult one.
I literally, and we disagree on this a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, leave.
But
As soon as somebody thinks,
that you used to.
I'm just like, there's just the effort. I feel like it'd be less effort to find a new job. If you're stuck, then proceed with DK's
No, but I think it's
recommendation.
just,
But I'm just like, it's
I-
so much effort because I have seen firsthand somebody.
but the
who I
old ways
felt-
kept coming back, like just like out of the side.
Look,
like,
already, you're
Yeah, it was
giving
like-
now. The
no, but
person
like
don't
that
get it.
person literally had like inside in their eyes, like you just like
In their
I
eyes.
see it in you. This behavior, is the
This
same behavior that I
is
don't like.
exactly what I'm talking about. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen,
No.
if you find yourself in an environment where
No.
people have labeled you something, it is easier, in my opinion, to leave the
But-
place because people are going to say things like,
That-
it's in your eyes.
No, but the thing is, so I say that like half joking, half not.
Yeah,
But
joking.
half not. I'm acknowledging
Half
that I'm
joking,
not.
tell the
Okay,
truth, it's like
I-
10% joking.
It's a joke still. Nonetheless, there's some joke in there. All right. If it's a 10% joke, it's still a joke. all right.
Terrible. And you're going to have to come up with a quote, by the way.
I'm gonna come.
Okay, I'll come.
Yeah,
Go for
please.
it.
So I think that the first part is you have to then work towards, and I think you have to almost swing almost the opposite side in order to try to make the point, but they will be working with you in order to try to balance that sunk bias or that bias view that they have of you. So I think that's very important that you really work hard towards being able to build that trust and to rebrand yourself and rebuild that reputation. And it's very possible. I've seen people come from the ashes and become that. So that's very possible. The second thing is that if you're not able to build that, then you also have to work with other people to try to help build that image and to rebrand yourself, rebuild that reputation. Because sometimes what you need are also people speaking more positively about you in spaces that you're not in, so that you're not only just fighting the fight, but there are examples of other people talking about you that are contrary to what somebody else might view you as. And I think if you don't have other people batting for you and talking about you positively or in a different light, you're always going to struggle, because you can try to sell yourself, but the best thing is for other people to sell you, because it's a view that is coming from somewhere else.
Okay.
And the last thing,
Okay. You're
It-
over 2 minutes, by the way.
it is okay. It is okay to find solace somewhere else, to look for opportunities elsewhere. Like I said, if you've got something in hand, it's okay. And you'll probably be able to make better decisions. But the key around that is to know that you shouldn't fall into the same trap or same circumstance that got you there. So where you go, make sure you don't fall into the trap of becoming that labeled individual. And then just you're going to be in the same space complaining about the same thing, but in the end you've changed the environment 3 times, then it's about you and you're the problem here. Quote.
That in light, I do have a quote for us.
Go for it.
The victim mindset will have you dancing with the devil than
Nope.
complaining that you're in hell.
Wild.
Mm-hmm.
That's so wild.
Okay, close us out. We're done.
And you be dancing with the devil.
Yeah. Yep.
So you know
By Steve Murrow Bully.
so the beauty about that is that blame game is a combination of 2 things.
Yep.
You feel as though you are in this space dancing with the devil and complaining. But the reality is that you carry a lot of the keys to be able to not be dancing with the devil, right? And if you're able to leverage some of those things, which include and not limited to leaving, you are not just complaining and you're not just moping about being a victim in a space and the blame being on you and constantly, woe is me. The reality about everything that we talk about is about taking your own destiny into your own hands and finding ways for you to be able to overcome and rise beyond that occasion. And so when we talk about taking matters into your own hands, no, is there any way that people could take their matters into their own hands? Like maybe, I don't know, like some form of training.
Please go to www.t4leader.com and check out how to thrive in a toxic workplace.
Talk about plugs, yo. I'm like, I'm plugging you in. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, that was so much fun. I really appreciate you joining for today.
This podcast is brought to you by Transformation Leader. You can follow us at www.t4leader.com.